anecdotal, but it leads to your question.
Okay.
I started researching this when my best friend and my cousin regressed into, they got brain damage and started regressing into, regressed into autism after the MMR. Now, at the time, I wasn't against all vaccines. I just thought maybe the MMR was bad. Maybe I thought that there were too many antigens in one, and it caused, that was the thing, was like kind of complicating things. My friend goes, and she's like, well, I'm going to sue the pharmaceutical industry. I'm like, yeah, you should, because he was normal and fine before he had that vaccine, and now he's flapping and doesn't talk anymore. Goes and finds that you cannot sue the pharmaceutical industry directly for vaccine damage. Okay. So when you hear people getting money or winning in vaccine court, there's actually 75% tax that taxpayers pay, and it goes into a fund, and this money is allocated to people that have been compensated for vaccines. It's really hard to win in vaccine court. You have to have a doctor to vouch for you. It's not a court of trial and evidence. It's basically kind of like what do you call it, like a mediation, like in one room. There's no jury of peers. You have to present your evidence. It takes like years to win sometimes. I do have a couple links to some law firms that show the cases of the vaccines that they've won for. But going back to that, it's a huge profit in the sense that pharmaceutical industries can make a huge profit off of vaccines, and they don't even have to, they don't have to worry about being sued anymore. So for a business model, it's very profitable. And if these vaccines are causing autoimmune disorders, which is going to lead to people having to buy more medicine from them, it's profitable, right? Now, you can sue for drugs, but you can't sue for vaccines. Vaccines is under what's called a biologic.
Someone on here is a regular Spinal Tap-Roo wanted to know, was it Reagan that made it?
Yes.
It was Reagan?
Yep.
Yeah.
That made it not possible to sue over vaccines.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were so many lawsuits, especially from the DTP vaccine in particular. And one of the manufacturers, because different pharmaceutical companies has their own version of a vaccine. So for instance, like you can get a hamburger from like Burger King or McDonald's or, In-N-Out. So each pharmaceutical company has their own vaccine. So like Sanofi Pasteur has their own vaccine. Merck has their own vaccine for the flu. So they have does that make sense? They have their own vaccine. So
now the big thing that keeps coming up, I don't know if you guys want to move on to another topic, but people keep wanting to know about the connections with autism. It seems to be everybody's talking about that in here.
All right. Well, let me see. I think I did. I answer.
I mean, that's definitely a running thing. What about why they
profits? Yeah, and also pediatricians. Now, I think that pediatricians are. I don't think like all pediatricians are in on it. They're only beholden to what they're taught in medical school. If they're taught that vaccines save lives, they have to give vaccines on a certain schedule, and they're taught to ridicule anything outside of their allopathic training as not suitable medicine. Then they're going to believe that. Now they do get reimbursed $400 per kid. For fully vaccinated kids. So if you're a parent that doesn't want to fully vaccinate your kid, you want to partially vaccinate your kid, they won't get that $400 reimbursement. So they have, or bonus. I'm sorry, it's bonus. They get they buy the vaccines. Then on top of that, the insurance companies reimburse them for each child that's fully vaccinated. And then on top of that, they have to have a certain percentage of their practice vaccinated in order to receive the full bonus.
They get the bonus from the pharmaceutical company or from the government?
From, I think, the insurance company.
Oh, from the insurance company.
Yeah, There's been multiple studies. I'm looking at 2 of them right now that says that that's actually just not even true, that the administration of vaccines was a money loser for doctors, and that's why doctors were actually trying to stop doing them, and we're trying to encourage them to be done in clinics. And what happened was the pharmaceutical companies started reimbursing the difference between what it cost to actually administer the vaccine and what they were losing on administering the vaccine, so people would keep going to their doctors and be able to ask for more information about the vaccine.
I just want to make it. All right. So I'll put the link for this in the bottom too, but this is from the 2016 Blue Cross Blue Shield book, and it says a reader sent us a link to a PDF file of Blue Cross Blue Shield's physician incentive program available online. Wellness and Equality learned that insurance companies pay pediatricians massive bonuses based on the percentage of children who are fully vaccinated by age 2. So here we go. These are the list of vaccines that they should get by age 2. And they have to have 63% of their practice vaccinated, or they won't get the full bonus. They get $400 per patient, right? So how much money do doctors really make from vaccines? The average American pediatrician has 1,546 patients, though some pediatricians may see more. The vast majority of those patients are very young. Perhaps children transition to a family physician or stop visiting the doctor as they grow up, as the table explains. Blue Cross Blue Shield pays pediatricians $400 per fully vaccinated.
So what happens is,
did the pharmaceutical industry write that article?
No, actually they didn't. But
how do you know who wrote that article? Where'd you getting it from?
So I'm saying you're quoting a lot of stats yourself, and I
actually have a insurance paper and write-up that actually shows that, so I can give that to you as well.
Okay, I'm saying that's fine,
and there's pediatricians that have testified to the fact that when they choose not to, mandate vaccines in their clinic, that they lose money. So, I mean, you can read something that's saying that's not true, but I have testimony and I have, insurance papers showing that about, the bonus.
But a testimony of a doctor is anecdotal at best.
Yeah, so is the stuff that you're saying. That's also anecdotal at best. So I would like to see your credible references. Where's your data? I would like to see it. Where is it?
If the doctor is saying that they refuse to administer vaccines, wait a minute. If a doctor says that they're going to not mandate vaccines, isn't it just as likely that people go, wait a minute, if he's against vaccines, I don't want to go to that doctor, and maybe they see their practice start to decrease?
No, because really what they'll usually do is they'll recommend the vaccine and then they'll give the patient the choice to vaccinate or not. So most pediatricians do, even the ones that aren't pro-vaccine, they'll still give their patients the choice to mandate vaccines.
All doctors have to give the patient the choice. There's no way that a patient. Hold on a second. But
they get either they're bullied into vaccinating, or they get the vaccine, or they're bullied into getting it. They're not given informed consents of the risks, of the adverse events. So.
Let me ask you. Somebody in the chat, Carrie Donovan, who happens to be on your side on this. Verstein wanted to know, she's been talking in here about there's people who are more in danger of getting autism from vaccines, like people with higher IQs. But she said that the reason why that's not really brought up is because of all the politics that have been injected into genetics and IQ testing. Have you read anything about that or no?
I haven't. I mean, it could be possible. I don't know anything about that.
Well, Brian Hendricks is on. I asked him to jump in because like I said, I don't know that much, but he said he wanted to answer some questions that came up as well. So.
Yeah, don't treat me like a stream crasher. I'm not trying to crash the debate. I was invited on.
I invited him here to help with some of the scientific stuff because you said you wanted to talk to him too, Verstein. So Brian Hendricks, evolutionary biologist and all-around alcoholic. He's on the show.
I'm not drinking tonight.
Good. Did you take any vaccines tonight?
I took a lot of vaccines when I was a kid, and I've never got the measles, the mumps, polio, tuberculosis.
What about crabs?
Crabs, I've had them 3 times. We don't need to get into that. Okay. No, but I was just dying to touch one Verstein, am I saying that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Your opening statement about, physicists and X and Y, they're not taught about vaccines. And that's because vaccination science is a specialized branch of biomedical immunology. And it makes sense that just because you studied science, you didn't learn about that. Science is broken down into categorical branches of relevancy. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons it works so well. Like in evolutionary biology, we don't learn about immunology, but in microbiology, which was my bachelor's, we learned a little bit about it, but not enough to be an expert on it. You have to parse scientific disciplines out, or they don't really work. They're just not muddled under an umbrella called science.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of that, but pediatricians are the ones that give vaccines, and they're not taught about that in medical school. In fact, there was a guy who was an author and researcher that did a study, or not a study, but he actually got all of the common medical books that are taught in medical school. So one on physical exams, human anatomy, biochemistry, microbiology, systemic diagnosis, pathology. In epidemiology, he only found one paragraph talking about vaccines. In immunology, in the immunology workbook, there were no mention of vaccines. Pathopsychology, was a book, EKGs, OBGYN, 1.5 pages on vaccines. Nelson's pediatric reference guides, which was about 5,000 pages, only 11 pages on vaccines, and that just includes the vaccine schedule.
But what you're talking about, doctors, when they go to medical school, especially ones that are planning to be practicing, general practitioners or pediatricians, mm-hmm. they don't study the reasons why they give the majority of medication.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They don't study any type of medication.
Then why are we trusting them?
Why are we trusting them? Because when we go to them and we're sick, when we leave, we feel better. It's one of the reasons why we don't die of strep throat.
Now here we go.
Actually, they prescribe antibiotics for strep throat because strep throat is a
bacteria.
Let me finish. Strep throat is actually a bacteria infection.
I know that.
You go there and they're prescribed antibiotics. So antibiotics basically is also now being shown to cause problems because it's basically killing our internal microgut flora, enabling us to get more disease. So they don't actually really cure anything. They write prescriptions, and they haven't really cured anything.
They haven't cured.
I don't go to the doctor because I know what to do.
I don't know how one is supposed to respond to that line of reasoning. What are the doctors called who deliver babies?
OBGYNs.
Their name, yeah. Well, if that's who deliver babies, do they need to know how DNA mixes in zygotes and in utero and how babies grow and form and develop, or do they just need to know the applicable practical processes by which to deliver a baby?
I think that if you're going to recommend that people get vaccines and they say that they're safe and effective, that you should know what you're talking about, and they don't.
Not the person who administers them. The person that administers the shot needs to be trained in how to give a shot.
Well, the person who administers that shot
anybody that's trained to administer to give a shot needs to know what they're giving.
95% of any shots and injections you're getting in the hospital are given by nurses who know even less than the doctors.
Actually, they probably know more. That's why they reject getting vaccines.
Yeah, I don't know if Nurse Jackie was a documentary. I think it was fiction, but.
Yeah. Okay. But so, yeah, I think though you should know what you're giving people. I think you should.
Maybe you should, but as Halsey said, what do they need to know beyond administering it? I mean, what does a heart surgeon know about the chemical makeup of the stent that they're putting in somebody's artery? It's compound properties. Do they know the rate of degradation when it's going to break down, or by how much of a percentage it increases the blood flow, or do they just know how to administer it to save someone's life?
They should know that. Why wouldn't they know that?
Why would they know?
Why wouldn't they know that?
Because they're not being trained in the construction of a heart stent. They're being trained in how to put it in. Once the science and research has been done to prove it's safe and effective, their job is to administer it. Their job is to put it in the body, which is a skill in which they went to school to learn. They don't have to learn about its construction in order to do it, unless you want medical school to be 106 years long.
Exactly. It would just that's just so much education to give one person. Like I said, science is broken down into disciplines, and it's about its applicable properties in the real world. You can't just teach all these people all of these different things. They would never get out of med school.
Yeah, but it takes like 5 minutes to read a vaccine insert. Seriously.
And my cousin, he's a research scientist. He spends his time in a lab developing pharmaceuticals and developing different drugs. And if you asked him how to administer a strep test, he wouldn't know. So I'm saying he was never trained in how to administer. He was trained in research science, and he could tell you exactly how every single different research experiment he's done interacts with the body, but he has no idea how to administer those things because it's not his job to learn how to administer those things. It's a medical doctor's job to learn how to administer those things.
Yeah, but if you're going to say that vaccines are safe and effective, you should know that if that statement is true or not just.
But it is true. It's been exhaustively tested.
Really?
The people
what studies? Do you have any studies you can point me to?
How about, okay, no problem. No problem.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. You asked me a question. I'm going to answer it. Give me a chance to answer it.
But what's the catch? There's always a catch. When someone asks for studies, there's always a catch. There's always a genetic fallacy involved.
I need a specific study though for you to find. I need a double-blind, randomized.
You can't. No, there it is. There it is. That is the bullshit statement.
You're yelling. I thought you said you weren't gonna yell. My, are we angry today? Are we angry?
Cannot do wait a minute. You cannot do a double-blind placebo study with a vaccine. You're asking people to give. You're asking to give a shot that's a vaccine and a placebo and expose someone to a deadly disease. That is unethical in every country on the planet. So you're asking for something that cannot be existing, and now you're trying to say that that's proof it's scientific bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Vaccines are scientific bullshit, and they need a double-blind, placebo-controlled study to prove that they actually work. Duh.
Asking for something that does not exist in a single country on the planet.
Yeah, but it should.
And you're saying that's the standard it should be held to.
Yeah, exactly, because that is the golden standard of science.
It's the golden standard of pharmaceuticals. It is not the golden standard of biologicals.
Yes,
no, it isn't. It isn't. You cannot expose. What are you saying? You should give 2 people a vaccine for AIDS, and then you should give all 4 AIDS, and then the 2 that got the placebo, well, they die, so that sucks for them. But at least we can prove whether the vaccine was active in the 2 that got the AIDS and the vaccine.
Okay, let's let Francine respond. No, that's what I'm saying. Let's let you respond.
So Congressman Bill Posey, actually in front of Congress, asked Colleen Boyle, one of the officials of the CDC, has there ever been a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study? And her reply is no.
So clearly, definitely, unequivocally, you have studied vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
We have not studied vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
Okay, never mind. So just stop there. That was the meaning of my question. You wasted 2 minutes of my time.
What you said, Halsey, was that it would be unethical. But at that time, there were tons of homeschooled Amish people that volunteered to do that study. They weren't vaccinated. And they agreed, they volunteered to do that, and they still have declined to do that today. Yes, there needs to be a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled study to say that vaccines are safe and effective.
So wait a minute, you're saying
right, it doesn't exist.
But wait, you're saying that we should take Amish people who believe that electric drills are evil, and believe that they have the mental capacity to say, yes, sure, expose me to smallpox.
Wow, what an incredibly supremacist, arrogant statement about Amish people. Well, just so you know, their belief in electric drills has nothing to do with the fact that we just need them to test an unvaccinated population.
Yeah, they actually have also really low ends. No, you won't expose them to smallpox. You vaccinate the people that are willing to be vaccinated, and you let them do their thing, and then you follow them, and you see who has the most autoimmune disorders.
Well,
then that's not a double-blind placebo study. You're putting them in different environments, and you're saying that you're going to register the effectiveness of the vaccine in 2 entirely different environments, in 2 entirely different communities that have 2 entirely different interactions with the public. That's not even close to a double-blind placebo study. That's actually the exact opposite of a scientific study, to just give two people two drugs and just let them go off on their own and say, oh, don't worry, we'll check back with you in a year.
Well, I'm sorry. I said, when I was going back to, I kind of went on a tangent. I was talking about vax versus unvax study. So that's something that needs to be done as well, and that hasn't been done.
That we need to take people who are unvaxxed,
yeah,
and then compare them to people who are vaxxed, and then determine whether the vaccines work.
You determine whether they work, whether they're efficacious. But this is how they test for efficacy, by the way, too. They measure the titers in the blood, and all that the titers really measure is whether the person has been exposed to the disease or not. So you can actually be vaccinated for disease and show positive titers for the disease and still get the disease. This is why we have vaccine shedding still.
Not a single case. There has not been a single case of a person who has been diagnosed with a disease from vaccine shedding. There has not been a single case, because shedding sheds RNA, which is not the actual part of the virus, which causes you to get sick. The shedding is of a virus particle, which does not cause disease. And what you're trying to say is that the shedding is going to cause disease, and there hasn't been a single case of that. There's a lot of people that like to say it will happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So what I'm saying is that you can't throw out a claim like that and then say that it happened when it has never happened.
Yeah, but I have references and research that, okay, so let me just read this up. First of all, also in the, I found in the chickenpox, varicella vaccine insert, it says that the vaccine can shed for up to 14 days. Mm-hmm. When you go and you visit people in the hospital, they say if you've had a live viral vaccine, to not come, because they know that it can shed and affect the people that are immune compromised. I also have tons of articles showing vaccines that shed. Also, in a lot of the
show me an example of someone who got sick from vaccine shedding.
Okay, hold on.